quorum this evening. I'll call the January 13th, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors to order. I will be presiding over the first part of the meeting this evening as it is our organizational meeting for 2025. So if you'll please rise as you're able for a moment of silence, and then I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item of business for this evening is, as part of our organizational meeting, it's to elect a chair for the Board of Supervisors. So I'll now open the floor for nominations for chair.
It would be my great honor to nominate Supervisor April DeMotts to serve as chair for 2025.
Do you need a second?
We do not need a second. Are there any other nominations?
I motion to close nominations.
Yeah.
Is there a second to close nominations?
Aye.
Second.
All in favor of closing nominations for the chair of Board of Supervisors signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we're going to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor to elect Supervisor DeMotts as chair for 2025 of the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors. Vicki, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchikowski?
Aye.
Ms. DeMotts?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Congratulations. Please hold while we rearrange.
Rotate.
That's what we did last year.
Howdy, neighbor.
Hey.
Great power. Great power.
All right. My little chair.
All right, give me just one moment to get my iPad up and ready.
Oof.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. This is a different view that I'm not used to. I've never sat in the middle before and on this side. Wow, you guys look great. Thank you all so much for your support. It really is an honor to serve as chair this year. And our next matter of business is the election of vice chair for 2025. So I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Steve Christiansburg for vice chair.
I'd like to close nominations.
Okay, we have one nominee for vice chair, Supervisor Fitchikowski, and a motion and a second to close nominations. All those in favor of closing nominations for chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move to the vote on Supervisor Fitchikowski to serve as our vice chair. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion?
Yeah, he's a great vice chair. You're going to love working with him.
All right, all right. All right, Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, moving on to the selection of meeting dates for 2025. It is our general policy that our meeting dates are the second and fourth Monday of each month. We begin here at 7:15 for a public meeting. If a closed meeting is needed, we can begin at 6 o'clock or thereafter. And this also covers if we decide that the weather or other conditions are such that it is hazardous for members to attend the meeting will be continued to the following business day. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts? Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next order of business is the adoption of our rules of order and parliamentary procedures. Can I have a motion?
So
Motion.
moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion?
Is there a separate vote for standards of conduct?
Yes, that's the next item. Okay, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, moving to the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct for 2025. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Supervisor Bone? Okay. All right. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye, with the exception of number 3 on standards of conduct. I think more research needs to be done on that. Thank you.
Did we get that read so people know what?
Yes. So item number 3 on the standards of conduct is attend all regularly scheduled meetings of the Board of Supervisors and boards or committees to which he or she, has been assigned, resigning whenever personal circumstances preclude regular attendance. And Supervisor Bone and I have discussed that about getting a better definition around what that means. Any more discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Did we change the motion?
No.
Okay.
I just made an exception.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes with 1 exception.
Did I vote?
Yeah, we did a partial vote and then finished the vote.
Okay.
Mary, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we have 2 presentations this evening. The first is our annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year '24. John Aldridge with Brown, Edwards and Company will be presenting this report. Welcome, sir.
And you all have a copy of the bound financial report in front of you that John might make reference to. Welcome.
Welcome. Good to see you all. Congratulations on your new promotion there. So anyway, y'all have the bound financial report in front of you, and I'm going to go through some just real high-level things, and if y'all have questions, just yell stop. But as you know, each year you have to have an audit. The state says you're required to have an audit, and included in your audit is not only the county, but it's the school board, the EDA, and the PSA. So all 4 components are part of y'all's audit. And so if you have that bound document, I just want to touch on a few things in that. If you went to page number 1, and probably the easiest thing to do is flip to about page 6 and then go back to 1 because 1 doesn't have a number on it. But the logo on the top's got Brown Edwards Independent Auditor's Report. The second paragraph is the one of most importance, where it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. That's known as an unmodified or a clean opinion. So that's as good as it gets on your financial statements, that you all had a clean opinion. Then beginning on page number 5A, we have what's called the management's discussion and analysis. That's set up for you all to read it, read those 5 or 6 pages and really get a flavor of what went on this past year at the county. And then we go to page number 7. And this is where we start seeing all the numbers. And this is what's known as the Statement of Financial Position. And this, I like to remind boards and councils of this when they look at this particular report, because in Virginia, it's a very unique structure how we do things. And the reason I tell you that is if you look in the asset section there, you kind of work your way down the page, you can see we had $125 million in governmental activities. But then you see capital assets. And capital assets are buildings, vehicles, land, things like that. And you can see we've got two things there. Non-depreciable of $40 million, and that's mainly land. And then depreciable, $255 million. That's where all the various buildings would be. And the thing that's unique in the state of Virginia is a school cannot have debt, okay? It just doesn't work. You can't issue debt if you're a school system. So what Virginia says is, you as Montgomery County, you put that school building on your books until the debt goes away. So for example, whenever y'all build the new Christiansburg High School, that building's going to be a building or an asset of the county until the debt is paid for. So that's why if you went over to the page and looked in the school board column, their assets are only $40 million. And you're like, wait a second, I know we've built more schools than that recently. So that's what's going on there, and I always like to tell people that. And then in the bottom, you can see how you paid for that in the liabilities section. You all have long-term obligations, and those are bonds primarily, that are due within the next year of $17.5 million. And then that will leave you all with $194 million of other outstanding debt. So those are your largest liabilities for the actual county itself. Also down in that section, you can see net pension liability. The county's net pension liability is $12.5 million. But if you went over to 2 columns to the right, you all can see that the school board's pension is $72 million. Okay, so that covers all school employees. All right, now let's flip over to page number 9. And again, if I skip over something, just yell. But this is how y'all are used to kind of managing the county day to day. And you do everything through what they call the general fund. And y'all can see there, the general fund at the end of the year had $79 million. Okay, so total assets of $98 million. And then we come down to the bottom, and that's what we call fund balance. And fund balance is everything that's left over. So it's after our cash, receivables, and the bills we have to pay, what's left over. And there are 5 categories there. Non-spendable would be stuff like long-term receivables. Restricted would be, for example, if you got recovery money and you could not spend it except for a specific thing. So that would be restricted. Committed is where you all as a board said, you know what, this is what we're going to spend money on, okay? You all commit. Assigned is where the county administrator could say, here's a project we're going to spend it on. And then what's left over is unassigned, okay? That's the important number. The unassigned for you all is $44.7 million, okay? That is how you should manage, or one aspect of managing the finances of the county. You look at that to see, okay, what kind of reserves do we have? And what I like to do is say, let's look at your expenditures and say, how many months of reserves do we have sitting in fund balance? And if you did the exercise, you all would have 3.6 months of reserves. So in theory, if you didn't collect a dime, you all could make it for 3.6 months. Well, the next question I always get, what's the right answer? Well, there really isn't one. It can go up to 10 for some people, say we want 10 months of reserves. I've had a client before, I think, had about 3 weeks of reserves. So it's all over the place. But what I did, because this is public information, I pulled that number for a few other localities around here just to let you see how you stand next to them. The first one I looked at was Bedford County, which is very similar to you all. They have 5.26 months of reserves sitting there. Albemarle County, again, similar to you all, with having a university within the county proper, I guess, they have 2.86 months. Rockingham County, 4.4 months. And then right next door, Roanoke County is 1.4 months. So the reason I tell you that is your 3.6 is in line with other localities in the state in this area. So 3.6 months of reserves. Last year, you were at 3.3. So it grew a little bit this past year. The other thing I'll point out to you while we're on page number 9, notice there that capital improvements or county capital improvements column. You can see there y'all are sitting on $46 million of cash. you're also sitting on $95 million of investments. What that is, that's all the bond money that you all received but have not spent yet, okay? That's the money that'll be used for the Christiansburg High School and other projects. There's only one risk in doing it this way, and I always like to warn clients of this. These are tax-exempt bonds, and what's happening is you're putting that money in the bank and you're earning interest on it. Well, the IRS looks at that and says, you know what? These are tax exempt, and the last thing we want localities doing is investing all this money, making this all around the system. So there's this great concept, and I know Ms. Hill's aware of it, it's called arbitrage. And arbitrage is when they look at that and they say, you know what, we're going to tax you on that and the earnings on that. So the reason I might bring that up, with that significant amount of money and a project that's going to take a couple years, just be aware of that it might come up. It might end up being, you know, you're investing money, and most people do with state non-arbitrage. It's a group, and that's the whole reason they're there, is to help with this process. But I've seen the last couple of years, localities have to pay a few $100,000 on interest earnings on this and penalties. So just something I like to bring up. And then only a few other things I'll mention in this report. If you went to page number 13, you all could see the budget this year for the general fund. There are four columns there. You can see the original budget. That's where y'all got together and said, you know what, this is what we're going to go into 2024 with. Well, as you know, things happen during the year, and you're like, we need to change this. We need to tweak it. And so you get to the final budget. So that's after all the amendments and all the changes that came through. That's where you see there the final budgeted amount. Then you compare that to the actual results. And you can see in the top section, you all budgeted $157 million in revenue, and the actual was $167 million. So you were ahead of budget by $9.5 million. So again, you beat budget there. Well, then you come down and look at expenditures. You all had a final budget of $173 million, and at the end of the day, you all only spent $149 million. So you were below budget on your actual expenditures, and you can see there are a couple of categories that would fall into. Schools was behind by about $8 million between what actual and what budgeted was, and then again, economic development, you can see it as well. But again, the good thing is you didn't overexpend your budget, okay? All right. Now just did want to point out a few other things to you all. If you went all the way back to page number 118, y'all could see the results of the PSA. They are shown back there on page 118, and it's broken down into two categories. You've got water and wastewater. Together, they form the PSA, but you can see it there. The first page will be the assets and liabilities. But then the second page, starting on page 119, we actually have the revenue and expenses. And you all can see in the middle there, both of those had operating losses for the year. So water had an operating loss of $41,000, and wastewater had an operating loss of $317,000. Again, the way they're supposed to be set up is we have user charges and user fees to cover the cost. You know, talking the dollars we're talking, that's basically break even. It's very close. But it's something to always monitor. If you've got a situation where it's always an operating loss, then that's time to look at our rates. Are they proper? Do we possibly need to revisit those and look at the rates that we have in place? But again, that's a tool y'all should use and look at. And then also 2 pages over on page 122, if y'all wanted to see the activity for the school system, that's where it begins, and you can see all the various things that went on at the school system throughout the year. And then my favorite part of the report starts actually on page 130, and this is all the statistical information for the last 10 years. And my favorite one, believe it or not, is on page 133. And this, on page 133, you can look at the county over the last 10 years and kind of see where we've spent our money and where we've received our money. Taxes back in 2015 totaled $92.9 million. This most recent year, taxes were $132 million. So our tax base has grown a nice bit there by about $40 million over 10 years. But also you can look below in expenditures, our costs have not gone down. You can see there are two categories in local governments that traditionally go up every year. The two are this: public safety. You can see public safety back in 2015, we spent $15.5 million on. This past year, we spent $24.6 million. The other category that consistently goes up is education. You spent $42.7 million back in 2015, and y'all spent $55 million this past year on education. So again, those are good statistics. I think it's a good thing to track for you all. And then the last thing I will mention to you all goes all the way back to page 154. And this is what's called the Schedule of Findings and Question Cost. And this is what I would often call the report card for the whole audit, because not only do we look at the numbers, we have to test compliance with federal money that came through here to make sure you spent it properly. We also have to make sure all the various state code and regulations you followed that we have to look at. And so on Part A7 there, you can see the various federal programs we looked at. So we looked at COVID-19, we looked at various education stabilization fund programs, and we looked at some Medicaid cluster programs this year. So those were the ones we looked at. The good news is, if you flip over to page 156, item C and item D, there were no findings at all. So you spent the money appropriately, you complied with all the state findings, and so there were no issues there. The only item we continue to bring up in here, and you are fully aware of, is just the segregation of duties. You simply do not have enough people right now to split all the tasks up. So there's some overlapping tasks. Y'all have done a good job of addressing them. You've done what we call mitigating controls. They're just still there. And since they're still there, I have to report it, okay? There was nothing that we uncovered during our audit that gave us concern. It's just the fact the condition's present that we bring it to your attention. So with that, I know there's a lot of stuff, and Ms. Hill, or if anybody else, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Aldridge. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I'm seeing some yeses. I saw Supervisor Bone first.
Getting back to page 9 about the arbitrage, have we been taxed on the earnings?
You wouldn't have been yet. It happens every like 3 or 4 years. They have it's a formal calculation you have to do every 3 years.
We did have to repay some arbitrage, but no penalty. And it comes out of interest that's been earned on the proceeds.
Sounds great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor King?
You just talking about in staff, are you talking about in the finance department or all over?
No, it's just mainly financial. It controls over finances, not the public service or anybody else. It's mainly just controls over finance. Yes, sir.
Have you got a recommendation what you think we need?
Yeah, you could easily probably hire 1 to 2 more people to take care of it, but then here's the problem. People have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Are we willing to take a little bit of risk versus adding, $120,000 of cost? It's kind of it's a balancing act. To make it go away, you would probably need at least easily 1 more person, maybe 2.
And we added a person in the finance department, that's helping Lisa do a lot of the reporting. So I know that they're consistently looking at that, and Terry's on board now as well as our CFO. So we are looking at that. It's our goal that we can get that to go away.
Any other?
Just
Supervisor Grassley?
Yeah, so going back to that same question on the separation of duties. So is that on page 155 here where there's a few different criteria? Those are either the steps or the processes where we've got some risk.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the laundry list. If you wanted to say, all right, how do we make it go away? You work on those 8.
Yeah.
That's
fantastic. Thank you.
And I'll tell you this, you all have a very good staff. Years ago, it got a little behind. There was some turnover, and things are back online now. So if there was ever a time to start addressing these, it would be now, because we're caught up. You all are caught up where you need to be, so now would be the time to start addressing them.
Just for educational purposes, this is more to Ms. Hill. Would you just let the public know why it's important to have those months of money in reserve?
Oh, yes. As we talk about from time to time, the county collects our major source of revenue twice a year, June 5th and December the 5th. And so we need to maintain some reserves, as our most significant amount of reserves, to cover the cash flow through the months that we're not collecting the real estate taxes.
Right, and our financial planners advise us on that.
Yes, they do.
3 months it's kind of the sweet spot. You're in a good place. You're in a good place with that.
And just to remind people, and maybe folks at home that are watching, the way that we determine that, it's not based on a certain number of months that we have in fund balance, but we look at actual cash flow over the past 24 months and see where our low points in cash are and make sure that we have enough funds in our cash reserves to cover that balance.
Okay. Did that bring up any more questions?
I would like to thank the finance staff. They work really hard. I know Lisa puts a lot of hours in herself getting these things done and making sure that the staff's doing all the things that they need to do. And I appreciate John and his kind words as well. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Y'all are a pleasure to deal with, so good client.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the books. I'm sure many of us will be reading them. Thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
Our second presentation this evening is from the Virginia Department of Transportation with Mr. David Clark. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Just a few kind of maintenance type updates. We've been busy most of this month and a lot of last month too with weather-related events naturally, especially the last few days, but also into December, just sometimes mobilizing for things that happened or didn't happen. Even if it's a small event, we have to get ready and be ready to go if it does come. So it kind of cuts into the amount of maintenance we end up doing. But we did get some brush cutting on Coal Hollow Road, some patching done on Walton, Coal Hollow and Fire Tower, some grading of the gravel roads, machining shoulders, did some shoulder work on 460, and a little bit of a slide repair on 460 on top of Brush Mountain. As well as taking care, there's been emails and stuff from various board members. I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of that because I wasn't here last month. There was a question about, and it came up at the last board meeting on some of the lines on Piney Woods Road. Those are going to be looked at, first of all, for the section that came up and has now looked like it's been scraped up quite a bit just by the snow plows. May need repainting. There was a question to the cost of those and who did the work. I'm still looking into that because about half our work is done by contractors and the other half's done by VDOT state forces. So I'll get back with the county on some of those questions. There was a question about 5 Points Road in Reiner and the maintenance of it and how much is in the state system. I don't know the length of it, but it does. There's an interstate maintenance sign. There's a gravel section and there's a paved section that kind of almost forms like a bypass for Route 8, except it's very narrow. But there's a section that goes more towards the golf course that is gravel. And there's some work we need to get done out there with some putting out some additional gravel and maybe cutting some brush. But there shouldn't be any controversy on whether it's a state maintained road or not. It is. I believe there's a end state maintenance sign at the end where we do end the maintenance. We had some like potholes and something like that on Wake Forest that we took care of. Some Watch for Children signs have been requested, and we're working with the county staff to do that. Bow Hill Road and Willis Hollow also had some requests for maintenance that we were able to get to, I think, at various times. And we're still looking at a request for replacement of some signs on Dry Valley for 45 miles an hour, which would go with, and that's not new signs. Those are signs that were already in place. We have to check out. We have a record of where the zones are. So if there was a 45 there, we'll replace the signs if they were knocked down and never replaced. And we're hoping to have a fairly dry week coming up this week. It's going to get cold at night, but temperatures should be decent in the daytime. I believe we did get schools going today. They were late, but they did go today. So thanks. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll see if there's any questions from anybody. I'm looking down. Any questions? Supervisor Biggs?
Okay. Well, thanks for getting the pothole fixed. I know that the individual I told you was very happy about that. And did you get Clay Street in the county scraped?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
We-
Thanks for that.
Yeah,
'cause I
there's
gotta-
two odd little sections of that are in the county. You have to go through the town of Blacksburg to get them. One's Clay
Yeah.
and one's at Murphy subdivision.
So one was from E and one was from A, but for F, I want to ask, going back to Buck Mountain and Evergreen Road, bringing them into the VDOT system, what do we need to do to get that done? And what is the timeline for getting it done? Because I had folks contacting me, after we had the bad
Yeah,
weather.
we went out there and took a look. It's been a couple months. In fact, I talked to a citizen out there at the time. They were quite excited about it happening. It still will take, I think there's a little bit of maybe some ditch work that we would require. I don't know the timeline just yet. I spoke to our land use engineer and our subdivision specialist, Jesse Miller, today about that. He's going to get back on that. We hope to, I'll try to get you a timeline here in the next week or so.
That would be great, because then I can tell them, sort of that
Yes.
it's progressing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a question anymore of is it going to happen, but we just a couple little things to take care of, and it will happen.
Does it help if we go to the district office?
No, it's all done right through here. It's in fact, the county is the government that requests and accepts additions and deletions from the state system. It just has to meet our standards.
Okay.
But VDOT can't spend any money on bringing those up to standard. So as soon as it's up to standard, we can accept it. It's
Okay.
strictly between our inspections and the county staff.
Okay, so if you could, that would be great if you could send me a timeline and I'd get back to those
Sure.
folks. Because it's been an ongoing issue for a while, so that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Grasky, no questions? Any questions over here? Supervisor Bone?
I was up on the Forest Service Road up Brush Mountain, and you guys redid the first mile really well a couple years ago, right?
Well, it's not a VDOT road.
I
That's
know,
yeah,
but you
so-
guys,
Yeah.
somebody did a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, instead of letting it kind of go by the wayside again, there are some beginnings of some serious potholes. How do we stay on top of that, or can we not do that?
VDOT cannot do that section of it. We can work on the part that's right there next to 460 that was in our right of
There are
way.
some potholes
Yeah,
starting
and
there.
that's fine. We do the same thing on Farm View, right across from where North Main comes in. Up to the right of way line, we'll do some work, and I can look and see where the right of way line is
Just a
on that.
little bit there,
Yeah,
but
and we were
like
yeah.
on the mile, they're starting to get
Yeah.
ruts and stuff like that, so. And then, we had talked about this a long time ago, about the sign at exit 128 that says trucks don't go past this point. I thought that there was a light. There was a light, but it was one of those temporary lights, and it's now just hanging there, right? And so there's that light stopped working long time ago. I don't know if we want to put like real flashing lights on that sign or not, but there was one at one point.
Okay, yeah, I'll look at that, and I'll get our traffic engineering section may want to relook at the whole thing and see what's appropriate, because there's different kinds of signage now available.
Is much going on for the Love station? That's like, I'm surprised how fast that kind of,
That's going quite. I don't know when the opening is. I drove past it the other day, and it looks like they're getting really close.
yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Kitts?
It's my two things. Blinking light on Radford Road coming up the hill, and the traffic at Price's Fork. I told you, every month.
It's still the
Every
same.
time I see you, I'm gonna bring this up. I'm a dog with a bone on this one, so.
Yeah. I'll get them to take another look at it. Now, the flash, the one at the Arsenal, in fact, I emailed the woman, I believe her name is Miss Barber, just the other day about that, and we'll be working on that here pretty soon. As soon as
I'm
the
taking a
weather
personal
allows
interest
us.
in that one. I drive that road every day, so. If I almost got clocked there a couple of times, that light changes pretty quick and you really can't
Yeah.
see it in the bend, so. And the Price's Fork traffic, at the one time of day?
Yeah, they've looked at that. I get different reports on that. Sometimes they're not saying, they're saying that it's such a small problem that I don't know if they can get that down to, the one or two cycles that it would take to do that. But I'll get them to look at it again. They may have to put a camera out there just to see what's going on.
It is only specifically, but it's when it does, it gets kind of tricky. It's only for about 45 minutes to an hour in the evening, and hasn't done it in the morning. So, but yeah, just trying to hit on that. But
Okay.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor King?
Appreciate you bringing up them projects and appreciate you looking into that. And one more thing is move the sign on Childress, the 45-mile-an-hour sign, passed.
Okay, I'll look at that.
I think we talked about maybe
Yeah.
moving it out there next to Indian Valley, somewhere around in there. Or maybe just going all the way to the county line.
They looked at. I'll see what the recommendation was on that. I don't think I've reported back on that yet.
All right, and I do appreciate VDOT and all their hard work on this bad weather.
I will let them know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Fidzikowski?
Yeah, appreciate the work on Willis Hollow. That day I sent you that email, I took a ride out there myself, and I was amazed. It was so muddy that I actually had to put my truck in four-wheel drive to keep it straight down the road.
And we called and spoke to the citizen out there too.
Okay, good. That's very good. Appreciate that. My next big project is we got to solve the issue of the truck parking in front of Lancer's truck stop. Actually, I think it's called something else now, but I had several complaints on that. Folks coming from the Blacksburg side, they come around that sharp curve, and the trucks are parked on both sides of the road. I think there's only no parking signs on one, but and then they'll have possibly one in the middle of the road wanting to make a turn, and it's now become it sounds like a traffic hazard issue. I don't know what the answer is. I'm kind of hoping that when Love's opens up, a lot of them will go down there and park, but 25 years of working on the interstate has taught me you could build 6 Love's truck stops and they'd all be full and still parking on the road. They're just,
You've seen it at the Radford rest areas. You've seen it right there at the exit 118.
yeah, it's definitely a problem, but that particular location, it's bad because of that sharp curve. I'm going to speak to the sheriff and see if maybe they could possibly do some enforcement there. I know they stay very busy, but they can't really enforce it if there's not signs on both sides of the road.
And we can work with them to see what it would take, what help they would need from us to help them keep it clear.
Yeah, and if we can make some progress on that, and that would be great. But like I said, I don't think it's a permanent solution. I don't know if there's any physical barriers that we could put out so it would deny, because, trucks, they can pretty much go wherever they want to, and the shoulder opposite from the truck stop is terrible.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop them.
Yeah.
And they'll also park in that little short turn lane for something Mountain Road. I can't think of it right off bat, but they'll park right there in the turn lane and block it also. So, and I don't know, maybe part of this is because we have a lot more drivers now that English isn't their first language, and maybe that's an issue. I don't know if that could be addressed somehow, but it definitely has gotten to the point where I think somebody's going to get hurt, and there's no reason for it because they shouldn't be there.
Right.
So, but I'll be talking to you about it.
Yeah,
probably
we'll
sometime.
try to figure out something.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I have just one item that a citizen has brought to my attention. They were wondering if we could give them the names of the herbicides used.
Yeah, we're working on that. In fact, I
Okay.
think we're working directly with that citizen. I think I have
Okay.
his information. I know him. He's asked some questions before. And these aren't the first questions we've had about that. I think our roadside manager who operates that program is going to get in touch with him. And whatever he sends to him, I'll send you a copy.
That
of it
would be
so you
great.
know.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Really appreciate your time tonight, and
Yeah.
we will see you again soon.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, tonight we have 2 public hearings on our agenda. The first is a special use permit for a short-term tourist rental. The applicant is R. Andrew and Katie Wells, and we have a presentation by Ms. Hopkins.
Yes,
Hello.
good evening. Hello. So as you stated, this is a request for a special use permit to allow a short-term rental. It will be located at 2671 Lester's Gate Road. The star here indicates the area. It's in the northeastern portion of the county outside the town of Blacksburg. The more zoomed in portion, you can see Harding Road here. It's located at the end of that where it adjoins Lester's Gate. Here is an aerial view. This is Harding Road here, turns into Catawba, and then this is Lester's Gate Road. This is the 3-acre parcel located right here. And this is your zoning map. It's zoned residential R2. The light blue zoning here is actually a multifamily zoning district. It looks like it has several apartments or townhouses. And then the yellow is community business. So as you know, we allow short-term tourist rentals within an existing dwelling by special use permit if it is zoned residential R2. We also have the supplemental regulations that accompany short-term rentals. This is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, less than 900 square foot home on 3.483 acres. Here are the list of the supplemental regulations. You all have seen these before. They deal with the number of occupants that is normally limited by VDH and the septic permit and what it will allow. Parking is prohibited in or along all right-of-ways and in yards. We discuss signage, meeting state fire prevention code, property management plans to mitigate any impacts to adjoining property owners, and an emergency evacuation plan. We also state that you have to post a copy of the noise ordinance because generally a lot of these do get complaints sometimes if there are parties or such happening on site. Connection to local phone service is required. We do know a lot of our county is rural in area, so we want to make sure anyone that's staying there has the ability to get out and dial 911 and have phone service. And then all outdoor burning will have to be in compliance with county code. Here are some site images. This is the house along with the front yard. Lester's Gate Road is here. And then this is another view of the front yard. There is an outbuilding in the back. This is looking from the existing driveway. There is an adjoining home on this parcel here. Looking to the rear, you can see an adjoining home in the back. This is the fire pit area. And then this is the property as seen from Lester's Gate Road. And then this is the driving or parking area, which is proposed to remain unchanged. Here's Lester's Gate Road looking west from the driveway, and then Lester's Gate Road looking east toward Harding Road. So traffic impacts will remain minimal. We do not anticipate any greater intensity than an impact of a single-family residence. Given the nature of short-term rentals, it could actually be much less depending on the number of days it's occupied. Parking is available for 2 vehicles maximum, and they are allowed to park only in the driveway. VDOT did take no exception to the approval of the special use permit, and they did not indicate that any upgrades were needed to the entrance. It is not located in a FEMA flood zone hazard area. It is on private well and septic. VDH has been contacted, and the applicant voluntarily replaced the septic system. It was not required. VDH has let us know that it is approvable, and they should be issuing their official approval tomorrow. There is a natural buffer. The closest dwelling to the structure is approximately 100 feet across Lester's Gate Road. The next is 270 to the south. Fire safety will be addressed during zoning and building permit process. Gatherings or parties will not be allowed. That is per the owners. The property will be managed by the owners. They do live locally, and their contact information will be provided to all adjoining property owners if there are any complaints or concerns. The owner has established quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily, and there will be an exterior camera installed for security. It is located in an area of residential transition. These are generally stable to low density residential neighborhoods in close proximity to the municipalities. And then these are your comprehensive plan goals that can be met with approval of the special use permit. We do have a planning and land use goal, cultural resources, economic resources, and environmental. The proposed use does meet the regulations outlined in the supplemental regulations, and it will remain residential with no more impacts than a full-time single-family dwelling. VDH does anticipate that approval to be issued no later than tomorrow, and VDOT took no exception to the request. The Planning Commission held their public hearing on December 11th. One adjoining property owner did cite some concerns. One adjacent property owner spoke of no concerns with the request, and one citizen did discuss some concerns with the short-term rental industry overall. The Planning Commission recommended approval on a vote of 8-1 to allow the request. And it did recommend them with the following conditions. Occupancy shall be limited to 4 occupants. That is actually a VDH recommendation based on the septic system that's on the property. The property shall be registered with the Commissioner of Revenue's office for meals and occupancy taxes. Any applicable permits must be obtained from the building department, and then all the requirements in that section of county code shall be met. Those are those supplemental regulations. We did notify adjoining property owners, placed signs on the property, and ran legal ads in the news messenger. All comments that we have received to date were included with your packet. There may be other additional comments to be made here this evening. I will take any questions you may have. Mr. Wells is here also.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for staff?
Just one.
Supervisor Grafsky?
So you said R2 zoning requires a special use permit.
Correct.
Is there a zoning that allows short-term by right?
Agriculture A1 would allow short-term by right.
By right, okay. Thank you.
Supervisor, or Vice Chair, excuse me, Fichkowski.
The one commissioner that voted against it, was there a reason for that?
No reason was stated when she voted against the request.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Biggs?
Did the conditions meet any of the concerns of the folks that spoke that had concerns?
The concern that was brought up during the meeting was that we had already approved another short-term rental. It was actually on Bunny Trail Lane, and they said they did not want a bunch approved in this area. So that was the main concern, that there would be multiple short-term rentals in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And does the applicant have a presentation this evening? No? Okay. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and open this public hearing. I do have one citizen that has signed up to speak on this topic. So this public hearing is on the short-term tourist rental application. And the one person that has signed up is Mike Scary. Come forward and state your name and where you reside. You have 4 minutes, sir.
Mike Scary, 11 Pepper Street, Christiansburg. I have known Andrew and Katie both personally and professionally for over 10 years now. I want to be clear, they did not ask me to come tonight. I watched the Planning Commission meeting, saw they had a request, and so I offered to come. Andrew said that's no problem. They are wonderful members of the community. I know that they'll be good neighbors and they'll be good stewards of the property. You will not have any problems out of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Sorry, I suggested nothing formal, but if I could
Come on up.
speak briefly. Good evening. My name's Andrew Wells. My wife Katie and I purchased this property in October of last year. And I just really wanted to take a minute to thank county staff to date for their time and assistance. Obviously, Planning Commission prior to this evening. We enjoyed that experience as well. And then to some of the questions / clarifications here, one of our neighbors, Marcy Gwinnett, who lives up on the hill behind this respective property, she was the one that spoke and kind of had some questions that we felt, in order to be good neighbors, we should address. And so we stopped by and visited with her and her son Michael Friday evening of last week. And at least I feel like it went very well. So just wanted to share that in context with what we're hoping to achieve, and that we have every intention of being good neighbors, and we are local, and we intend on self-managing. The dream here is to potentially build a home sometime in the future, but we're not ready to do that now, so we're just trying to be financially responsible in the meantime, in an area that we love and have kept an eye on. And this opportunity presented itself, and we were super excited to have a chance. So thank you to the board as well for your time this evening, and happy to address any additional questions.
Thank you, sir. Did anybody have any questions specifically for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else that wants to come forward to speak on this public hearing topic? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing.
Could I make a motion to put this on new business?
It is on new business for this evening. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
So moving into our second public hearing this evening, the subject of this public hearing is the 2025 Organizational Cooperative Agreement for our Joint Tourism Program. And I understand that Interim Tourism Director, Chris Lawrence, has a few things to say before we open the public hearing.
I do, thank you. And Jen's going to pull the presentation up. While she's doing that, again, it is a joint agreement between 3 local governments for our tourism regional efforts with the town of Blacksburg, the town of Christiansburg, and Montgomery County. And everything works, so that's good. So that's the 3 of us. Go to Town is kind of our brand in terms of marketing Blacksburg, Christiansburg, Montgomery County. The agreement, well, before I get into the agreement, the Virginia Tourism Corporation publishes data each year about the amount of spending across the state by jurisdiction. And in Montgomery County alone, $279 million is spent related to tourism activities. So tourism, and that's about 15th in the entire state of Virginia. So tourism is a very important part of our economy in Montgomery County, and it accounts for almost 9% of the jobs within the county. So hotels, restaurants, and all the things related to tourism that are in our communities. So the agreement itself, and we went over this at a work session, so I'm not going to get into great detail, but just kind of highlight the key parts. The agreement is set forward with all the correct parts, purpose, oversight, a funding formula, the duration of our agreement, how to terminate it if that was needed, and then advisory groups. The oversight is primarily done by a operating board, which is the 2 town managers and the county administrator. The funding formula will continue as 1% of the transit occupancy tax, and what we have proposed to change that, to add to that, is 0.002% of sales tax. And that's to try to bolster a little more support from the county, whereas we get a greater amount of sales tax. And we have 2 hotels. So it allows us to be a little more supportive financially in the program. And the duration of the agreement is for an initial 3 years with 2 automatic renewals, barring any announcement from either of the 3 parties, for 2 more 3-year renewals. So that's a total of 9 years. The advisory groups are the Montgomery Tourism Development Council. That is a group that you all do have an appointee on. And that is members of each of the jurisdictions, hotels, restaurants, and then some tourism businesses as a whole. And they provide input and advice. And then we also have a sports and outdoors committee, which is the 3 Parks and Rec directors, and in this case myself, but the director of tourism. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Christiansburg did approve this at their December meeting. We will have it on your agenda if you choose to act on it this evening. And then Blacksburg tomorrow will be scheduling a public hearing for February 11th, and that'll be the 3rd. And then once, assuming all is approved, we can advertise and try to recruit a permanent director. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that report, and thank you also
Thanks.
for serving in that interim role. Do we have any questions for Mr. Lawrence? Supervisor Biggs?
I just have a comment. I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've put into this and the networking that you have done. And I think it's really paid off. And it's nice to have everyone on the same track.
Great.
So
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions from any board members? Supervisor Kitts?
So I just want to make a comment because I understand that in the past, Christiansburg has had issues with the amount of return on their investment. Had good discussions back and forth with them, and just to let the people in Christiansburg know, I'm going to have a little more, into this one, so we could try to make sure that Christiansburg is represented correctly and properly. And I think that Chris has done a really good job of addressing that up front. And I look forward to the directions that we go. And there's a lot more oversight in this now because there's a lot more interest. And I think there's a lot more ability to have a solid return as we go forward. So.
Good point. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this topic. This topic is the Joint Tourism Program Organizational Cooperative Agreement. I don't have anybody signed up to speak to this topic specifically. Yes, ma'am, please come forward, state your name and where you reside, and you'll have 4 minutes.
Christine Waltz, 1370 Rigby Street, Christiansburg, Virginia. I originally was going to go up here and fuss a little bit because we had conversations about Christiansburg being represented. And when I went to the tourism site a week ago, I went to your breweries and wineries, and we had one brewery in our town, and it wasn't there, which is very discouraging. We spoke with Supervisor Kitts, and he fixed the problem. It's now on the page, so I appreciate that. And I realize Chris is doing interim, and one of the things I really appreciate that Chris has made it more transparent, so that way someone like me who maybe doesn't own a business but does have an interest in trying to improve the town has the ability to maybe make comments, and when they notice things like a brewery missing, can get the problem fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walls. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kim Bates. My family has owned property on Catawba Road for over 50 years. I went to Gilbert Lincoln Elementary School, but in the meantime, I've lived in Montgomery County, Texas. And I'm looking to change my residency to come back here this year. And so I spent the last couple of months coming to public meetings, Montgomery Matters, etc. And I want to say I am so looking forward to returning to Montgomery County, Virginia. One of the things that occurred to me at the Montgomery Matters workshop is that there's a lot of opportunity coming in this area, in particular if the train once the train comes to Christiansburg. The other thing I did is during COVID, I spent it at our house here in Montgomery County, and I did a lot of research on the land that we owned for so long to learn the stories behind it, but the history of the area. And what occurs to me is there's amazing history here. There are personal stories, there are stories of national significance, but there's a lot of stories that are very personal and very touching for anybody to be interested in. And I think this county has the opportunity to make it a destination for people to come from the northern cities at the end of the train route to learn about the stories of this area. And it's not just, the fact that you've got a university here. It's actually more the villages in the county. And it's the history of Christiansburg, to the prior speaker's comments. And it's going to take time to be prepared for that. So I'm thrilled to hear that there's a tourism board getting put together, because what I heard at Montgomery Matters is, well, that's Christiansburg's jurisdiction, or that's Blacksburg's jurisdiction. It needs to be pulled together That train coming in is going to bring so much opportunity to share the stories from here, but opportunity to build our income base from the tourists that come here. So I had no idea this was on the agenda. I came here just to see how the government works here, and I have to say I'm very impressed. Montgomery County, Texas, nothing like this. I have a lot of respect for how you guys are speaking together, sharing information, and how the presenters are so clearly a part of this community. So I just want to say I'm looking forward to coming here. I'm really excited to hear that you're doing this. And I think there's an amazing past here, but there's a really incredible future to come. And I'm looking forward to people being able to come here and learn about it. So I wholeheartedly support what you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Yep, you're good to go.
All right,
Please.
hello.
I was going to say, please start with your name and address, or where you reside.
Hello, I'm Max Brees at 1406 University City Boulevard in Blacksburg. I am a board member of downtown Blacksburg and was last year was board president. This year, haven't voted anyone in yet for board president, haven't had a meeting yet. I'm excited about everything I've heard and the little bits that I've been a part of for this cooperative program between the county and Blacksburg and Christiansburg. There have been concerns from the Christiansburg side, but I'm excited to hear how that is improving and assuaging those concerns. And of course, to remind everyone that a rising tide lifts all boats. Any success anywhere in the county to some degree is helping everyone. So I'm in support of this. I'm glad that you're expressing support for this, and hopefully we get this past all of the council check marks that it needs to receive. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have? Good evening.
Chris Walls, 1370 Raven Street. Yeah, thank you again, Derek, for taking care of that today. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with this because, you know, it's been going on for like 10 years, and Christiansburg never was represented. Unfortunately, you've got to deal with those 4 people at the town that wanted to stay in tour. Well, they wanted to get out, then they want to stay in, then they want to get out, then they want to get back in. And I don't think that's going to change. But the biggest thing to me is $176,000 a year is what, somewhere around there is what Christiansburg put in. Blacksburg, something like that. The county's been $30,000. I think this would up it to $60,000. But I just got the last audit. There's like $1.4 million in there. What are we doing? I mean, you're getting all this money, but it's not being spent on anything. It's almost like I know some government people hate that word, but slush fund, you know, savings account, whatever you want to call it. You're getting money and you're doing absolutely nothing with it. You've had a director in the past, you've had an assistant director or assistant whatever, and it just seems to me that you're getting all this money, but nothing's happening with it. So, you know, I don't know. And again, you're going to have to deal with the wishy-washy people down the street that want in, want out, want in, want out. So good luck with that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, Chris does a good job.
Is there anybody else that would like to come forward on this public hearing? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and close our second public hearing this evening, and we'll move to public address. And you have probably noticed that the screens are flashing the guidelines for public hearings and public address, so I will not read all of the guidelines. This is new for this meeting, so thank you very much to our wonderful staff member for putting that together for us. Thank you, Jen. And I don't have anybody on the sign-up sheet for public address this evening, but anybody can come forward. This is your chance to speak to the board on any topic. You have 4 minutes. Okay, seeing nobody come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close public address this evening. There is no addendum tonight, so we'll move into work session. Can I get a motion to move into work session to discuss the county's reassessment frequency?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we are in work session. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Hill.
I have to get the remote.
But we have to vote
Oh,
on
I'm
it.
sorry.
We have to vote on it, yeah.
Streamlining everything.
I'm out.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes. We are now in work session.
Now we're really in work session. Sorry about that.
It's okay, it gave me a second to get the remote. Thank you, Chair DeMotts. We're going to get started with the reassessment frequency review. Just to give a little background, the purpose of real estate reassessments are intended to restore the equity within the county so that assessed values are at a uniform percentage of the market value. And I'm going to talk more about that throughout the presentation, but currently we conduct reassessments on a 4-year cycle, which is the minimum frequency required by the Code of Virginia for counties of our size. And as I go through this and present a little more context and key points regarding the implications of this frequency potentially changing, we're not going to ask for any consensus after the meeting or the presentation, but if you have any questions, please let me know. When we conduct reassessments every 4 years, as many of you know, and for the folks at home, real estate values can escalate dramatically. Some cycles have dramatic increases. You can see on this chart, beginning in 1999 as our base point, and then looking at 4-year intervals. From 1999 to 2007, there were significant increases in the assessed value of property, and those only occurred every 4 years. So they had a greater impact than they would if they were performed more frequently. Then from the period from 2007 to 2015, we had very stable growth of about 2% during that time each year, each 4-year cycle, excuse me. And then for 2019, it was an 8% increase. Then, as you recall, in 2023, we had just under 30% increase for the assessed values. So at that time, the board asked the staff to explore different frequencies that reassessment could occur on. And Mark Magruder, our budget director, presented information in October of 2023 about this, and then we again spoke with you in November of 24. And at that meeting, you asked that we bring that to the to a board meeting where we can present to the citizens as well as the board members. And then at the next meeting on January 27th, we'll have a public hearing just to get input. We're not taking formal action at this time, but to just get input from citizens if they have any about this. Another very important factor to always remember when we talk about assessed values is reassessments don't affect people's tax bills directly because there are two pieces to that equation. It's the assessment and the tax rate. So there's not a direct correlation always between the assessed value and the tax bill. Now we have some graphics for you that we're going to share, and I really appreciate the staff helping work these things out with us. It was fun and challenging, and hopefully it'll be meaningful to you. This graphic on the slide, the first graphic, I'm going to have a couple more come on, show you what it looks like for a 4-year reassessment cycle, which is what we have now. So there are 4-year periods, and during those 4 years, the assessments stay the same for properties. So you can see from year 4 to 5, when the reassessment occurs, there's a large jump. This shows a comparison between a 4-year reassessment cycle and a biennial reassessment. And you can see that while there is some increase from year to year, it's much less dramatic, and still at the end of the 8-year cycle, it ends up at the same place. And then finally, we have the third graphic that shows what an annual reassessment might look like. I will point out that this assumes a linear increase in assessed values, which everyone knows isn't going to happen. It's not going to be exactly linear, but just for illustration purposes, we included that on this slide. It's important to note that increasing the frequency of reassessments smooths out real estate values and smooths those changes. And as frequency increases, the change becomes smoother and smoother. And it helps us account for a better reflection of the current market value of real estate, which results in more equitable tax bills throughout the county. This slide, this is a duplicate of the slide before at the beginning with the current year process. And then this shows you, it's just an example. It's not based on any actual data of how values might increase in the market. You can see the house sizes increase at varying amounts. In some years, they stay about the same as they show in year 6 and 7. So if we consider what this percentage increase looks like, you can see that, again, conducting reassessments on an annual or biennial basis, we will restore equity. This is another depiction of the market value scenario. This is what the 4-year assessment cycle would look like. So you can see that while the market's changing, those assessed values are staying the same over the periods. Then if it was a biennial assessment, that's the light blue line that is showing on the screen now. It smooths that out somewhat, and then the annual assessment smooths it out even more. We looked at what other counties are doing, and in the state of Virginia, it was interesting. We found that Montgomery County is the 11th largest county population-wise in the state. Just for counties, we're the 11th largest. And as you can see on this slide, there are 12 counties that assess every year, 15 counties that assess every 2 years, 20 that assess every 4 years. So there are a lot of counties that are smaller than us that are assessing on a more frequent basis. We asked the Virginia Institute of Government to survey localities to see if any had recently switched from a 4-year cycle to a more frequent cycle. And Orange County, which is a smaller county than we are, they have a population of a little less than 40,000, just, I believe, in 2024, moved their assessment process in-house. They no longer use a contractor, and they're going to move toward annual assessment. So that's an example and someone that we could speak to about a current transition. We didn't have responses from any other localities that had changed recently. Just to give you an update about where we are with our current reassessment status, we had the reassessment that was effective for calendar year 2023. Those values will be valid through December 31st, 2026, which is really just around the corner and will be here before you know it. The reassessment committee is in the process of meeting, and we're preparing an RFP to release so that a contract can be awarded and work can begin this summer. It takes about 18 months for the contractor to carry through the whole process. And that'll provide us with sufficient time for the board to consider the, switching to a more frequent assessment if that's your prerogative. As far as the decision timeline, as I said earlier, we're having this presentation this evening. We'll have a public hearing on the 27th for citizen input, and then we'll meet with you in the future at work sessions and obtain consensus about which path you'd like to go down. If you did decide that you wanted to increase the frequency, we would need to adopt an ordinance, and so that would require an additional public hearing. This is a sample transition timeline of the steps that would be required if we did choose to have more frequent assessment. We would need to create a real estate valuation department. We would need to develop the departmental staffing analysis and prepare a budget for that department. We could include the cost of 2027 in that budget proposal and then recruit and train staff in the fall of '26. That would allow us to begin the reassessment in early calendar year '27 and conclude by the end of '28. The new assessed values would go on the book January 1st of 2029. We could push that into the future one more year based on the current cycle that we're on if we needed a little additional time. So again, this slide just reiterates that there's a direct correlation between the frequency of reassessment and property assessments retaining a uniform percentage of the market value. More frequent assessments allow for more accurate alignment of assessed values to the market values. When we talked earlier about the sample market changing for a property, what can happen sometimes is some properties go up in certain areas of the county much more quickly than other areas of the county, which creates the disparity that I was speaking of earlier. Also, this will help us provide greater transparency and accountability when we contract this service with a third-party firm. It's difficult for the county staff to help with the transparency of the process because it is outsourced. We only have so much ability to know exactly what their processes are and those kinds of things. So that would be another benefit of switching to a more frequent or bringing it in-house. As I said, we're not really asking for direction tonight, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to address those.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm sure there are some questions. So we'll go ahead and start. Supervisor Grafsky, do you have any questions?
I don't know if it's a question, just much of a observation. So this process takes about 18 months, regardless of whether we do it in-house or contract it out, correct? Each reassessment cycle is approximately...
It could take if we brought it in-house and had the right number of staff, we could do it annually, and it would take less than 18 months. It takes 18 months for the contractor based on the amount of staff that they currently have.
And the reason I asked that, and, you know, I love the graphics, by the way, thank you, like the representation there. But, you know, you think about over the course of an 18-month cycle, those properties that are assessed at the beginning of the cycle, noting the fluctuations that we can have in this market, those houses that get assessed at the end of the 18-month cycle could have a very different outlook than at the beginning. And so I guess just my observation is that there's no great way to do this, whether
We're
it's
always
annually,
behind.
2 years, you know.
Right.
But I'm glad that we're talking about it, so that's all I have.
Thank you.
Supervisor Biggs?
I'm glad we're talking about it because, you know, I've sort of been wanting to talk about it for a long time because I really think our county is to the point where we really, this is my personal belief, really need to consider this because of our, you know, size and everything now. So thank you for the presentation, and yes, I like the houses.
Supervisor King? Keep you guessing.
The firm that we had do it before, you know, they come in and we was told, you know, it's hard for them to get help. What makes us think the county can get help?
We feel like that we will be able to recruit and train and get the right people that we need. The requirement would be that we would have to have someone who's a certified appraiser, at least one person who is a certified appraiser, or someone who is credentialed with the Department of Taxation as an assessor. That word left my mind. Assessor, appraiser, and an assessor. So we would have to have one or the other. And I do think that we would be able to, with the, it would be a more steady job. The people would work at the same place they're all the time. The contractors, I think, part of the challenge for them might be that they have to move around from county to county and they're away from their homes for periods of time. And I think that the county would be able to provide a better level staffing. Roanoke County has annual assessments that they do theirs in-house, so that would be someone that we would talk to about what they do to retain and attract assessors, and they've not had a significant amount of trouble with that.
And as you said, reassessment does not raise taxes.
That's correct.
The tax rate raises taxes.
Right.
So if we stay at 4 years, and just like we did a couple of years ago, when it went up 30 and 50%, we lowered the tax rate.
Right.
So we wouldn't have to hire nobody, just do it as we're doing it now. Hire the firm as we usually do.
Oh, if we continue to do what we do now,
Right.
I think that more importantly than how much people's total tax bills are is the proportion. If there's a certain area of the county that the market value of those homes is rising rapidly, and then there's some other areas where the housing values are not rising at all, and we wait 4 years to do a reassessment, those folks whose houses are becoming more valuable are not paying an equitable amount of tax compared to the people whose homes are staying the same value. So it's more about smoothing out and making it more equitable across the county compared to the market, as opposed to increasing taxes. Does that make sense? Did I explain that?
I think you did, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Kitts?
So I like that possibility because I think it does feed in with the taxes because we don't have to have as wild fluctuations. It doesn't have to go up and down. It can stay a little more steady. We have the ability to correct as the market corrects. And it gives us some flexibility and at the same time accountability, because people always complain, how the hell did I get my house adjusted like that? So appraised like that. So sorry, I finally let a word slip. So I'm all for that. I'm all for either the annual or biannual. The only question I have is how much, because we're looking at a staff, and I remember I'm showing us a slide one time, what kind of staff would be required for annual, what kind of staff would be required for biannual, and what the hit would be initially to do that. And
When we presented that to you before, they were fairly broad estimates. So we didn't want to bring that back to you until we had a little bit more direction. If we know that you do want us to look at that further, we will dig a little deeper, find out a little bit more about what our market exactly would need to pay appraisers and assessors in this area. And also, as we get this RFP process underway, we'll know what the contract value costs, because we had to estimate that as well. So we will bring that back to you if you want to go in that direction.
Okay, yeah, because I'm a little bit with where Todd's at, but I want to be able to even this out. I want people
Right.
to have a little more predictability, and I do want the areas that increase more to be able to offset the other areas, as opposed to waiting a long time and where it's not, where some people are paying more of a burden than others. So I'm all for it.
Supervisor Bone?
I have a couple of questions. On your slide where it showed the appreciation rate, the assessment rate going up over time, the years 2007 to 2015, you said 2% a year, I'm assuming? I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Hang on just 1 second.
It is at the beginning, for sure.
My clicker's not really fast. Okay, from 2007 to 2011, so over that 4-year period, the assessed value, the average assessed value went up 2% over the 4-year period.
Over 4 years.
Yes.
So really 0.5% a year.
Yes, and you will recognize that 2008
Right.
was in that time period.
Right.
So That's what happened.
So leads me into my second part of my question. In 2008, if we were reassessing, in 2009 was the year, because
Right.
everything would have dropped at that point. In order for us to keep the revenue the same, we would have had to have raised tax rates.
We didn't look at what our value did in 2009, but if a year went down and you wanted to maintain the same revenue, you would have to raise taxes. That's correct.
Right. And for the Great Recession, that kind of shook the real estate market too, and that would be the same case. So we're going to react to the market much more.
Right. That's accurate.
So in a rising market, does the county get more revenue overall because they reassess more often if tax rates are neutral?
Do you mean literally neutral, like we calculate the neutral rate?
The county real estate tax rate is kept neutral every year.
Does it stay the same, or it becomes neutral? Because we have to do the calculation to see what the neutral rate is. I just want to make sure I answer your question. If we kept the tax rate the same and there was a rising market and it stayed at 75 cents and it was a rising market, we would collect additional revenue a little bit quicker, because instead of having a big jump in the fourth year, we would incrementally collect more tax over that 4-year period.
Mm-hmm.
It would also help us not have the big
swing of
adjustment when tax rates go up, or when we have a reassessment and we get some additional funds on June the 5th that we haven't budgeted for. It would help us alleviate that a little bit. It would, instead of getting those funds, it would more gradually add to our base revenue.
Is the idea that, quote unquote, theoretically, we would be less likely to change our tax rates?
I can't speak to that.
That might be something that we could ask other colleagues that do annual or biannual assessments, what that kind of feels like and what their actions have had to be.
I do know that our neighbor, Roanoke County, that does annual assessments, does not change their rate very frequently.
Do they have you heard of any feedback from their real estate owners or the renters that they're happier with the reassessments more often?
Roanoke County?
Yeah.
No, we haven't heard anything from them, but they've been doing that for many years, so I don't know that they
So
would.
everybody's comfortable with it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Fishkowski?
Yeah, the reason we're talking about this is because we were shocked at the 30% increase. I mean, that's the whole reason that we're bringing this up. I can't wait to hear from the citizens about this, because what we're talking about is a double-edged sword. If property values continue to go up, can anybody remember last time they went down? 2008?
8, yeah.
2008. So it's 2025 now. So it hasn't been a dip since 2008. So would the citizens be happier with paying a flat rate for 4 years before getting a jump? Or would they be happier getting little incremental increases every year or every 2 years? And creating a department to handle all this, I know you haven't come up with firm numbers on that, but as I recall, it was considerably higher than what we pay the outside assessors to do, because we have to buy vehicles and all that. I kind of wonder if we went with a 2-year and it takes them a year to do the reassessment, what would they spend their time doing on the second year. I'm kind of curious about that. But also, I know that the state allows us a certain percentage, is that right, Marty? 1% of the reassessment to pay for that. Would that 1% be greater than our in-house costs if we created a department to do that? And I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now. I'm just trying to think, here we create another department that will be around forever, no matter how much the increase is. Is it going to be cost effective? Or are we just doing this so that it's more fair to everybody? And if that's the case, and we don't get the revenues that we need, guess what? Taxes go up because we got to pay for things. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. It's a very serious decision that we're going to be making. And it's my understanding that counties that do the every year reassessment, they don't do it the same way. Somebody doesn't go to everybody's house and knock on the door and say, hey, did you finish that basement? Yo, you added a new floor to your house, I see. And there isn't that kind. It's more done, I think, on the computer, isn't it?
It's pockets, neighborhoods are looked at each year based on where sales have occurred and that kind of thing. So no, every house is not looked at every year. And so if we went to a 2-year cycle, we would look at more houses in that 2-year period than we would in a single year. But I'm sure that someone in the audience has written down the questions and we'll get all the answers for you.
Just a thought.
Supervisor Biggs, you had another question?
Yeah, I just had it sort of a follow-up. If you were to change it, does it in any way help you with planning and budgeting?
It would help with planning and budgeting somewhat. However, we still would have to know what the tax rate was going to be. So if the tax rate was going to fluctuate dramatically, that part wouldn't help us quite as much.
Thank you.
Okay, let me ask just one question first. Can you move forward to the slide that's got the timeline on it? Because it sounds like a couple of people have got some questions about how this would be arranged. And I know our next step would be to schedule a public hearing.
We've already taken action to schedule that.
Right. And so we've got the public hearing on January 27th, and then some of the questions that have come up tonight, we'll be able to have more work sessions to have discussions on.
Yes.
Because I know it's a little bit more than what you had prepared tonight. And then Supervisor Bone, you had another question to follow up.
The bottom line is if the revenue, if the county would expect more revenue from a more frequent, that means our property owners and renters are paying more taxes along the way, right?
They would potentially pay more along the way, and as opposed to in the 5th year potentially paying a much larger amount. That's correct.
But again, within the same period of time, the county, you just said.
That's correct.
The county would probably have more revenue. The only way that we get more revenue is when the people in the county pay it.
If the rate stayed the same
Right.
and was not adjusted to a
Right.
neutral
So-
rate.
Just right out of the chute, our residents are going to be paying more taxes along the way.
You have to remember there are 2 pieces to the
I do.
equation. And if we assume that the board does not change the tax rate from what it is, that it's not revenue neutral, then they would be paying more. But if the rate is rolled back every year to the revenue neutral rate, then they would not be
Right.
overall.
And
And
I
we all know that
apologize.
some people pay more than others. It's an average.
Right. So since that's true, and I apologize for bringing up revenue neutral before because I wasn't thinking about it exactly right before, but I believe I'm thinking about it correctly now. what's really going on is the people who are benefiting from the values of their homes increasing more are, the equity is trying to stay as equitable as possible,
Right,
the more frequent that we do it.
yes, which is the whole purpose of reassessing property. Right,
So even though overall the the revenues are going up, the revenues coming in are higher. It's the people's whose homes that are increasing more, that are paying more of that increase than, like you said.
right, that's
Gotcha.
correct.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
So for those
Supervisor
of you that are
Kitts?
confused in the audience, so we have the ability to either, because it's the two sides of the coin on this one, it's the property values, it's the tax rate. So property values may go up, but the tax rate is more adjustable as opposed to going the full 4 years. So we have the ability, taxes do not necessarily go up. They could go down or stay neutral. And it can be a lot more accurate because it's not going and you're not dropping it all at once at different points. So we have the ability and the flexibility as a supervisor here to be able to affect the tax rate to make sure that it is more reflective of the area. So we can control it a little bit more. So it's not necessarily going up. It can stay neutral or go down because we have more accuracy and better data.
Right.
That's
And
my
if
summary.
if we went to annual assessment and the current rate was, we would calculate that and determine if it was a revenue neutral rate. And if it wasn't a revenue neutral rate and we wanted it to stay at that number, it would have to get advertised as a tax rate increase.
But that's not necessarily true we don't have to raise, we can stay where we're at.
That's right.
We have the flexibility and better data to be more accurate.
That's right.
Supervisor King?
But when you do reassess it, you can, as we did before, you could lower the tax rate. But citizens still gonna be paying more because their property's worth more, even at neutral rate.
If you would go to revenue neutral, some people are going to pay more and some people are going to pay less because it's an average. But if you lowered the tax rate, then they're going to pay less. We would assume most people would pay less.
I didn't.
Do we have any?
I just think, I'm just tell you where I'm at. I'm at staying where we're at.
Okay. Do we have any other comments about this? Okay, can I get a motion to come out of work session?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair DeMonts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and take it's 8:53 now. We're going to go ahead and take about a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 9:03. 1 hour break. Okay, we've got everybody back. All right. We'll move into items of consent. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, moving to new business. The first item on new business is the special use permit for the short-term tourist rental that we discussed earlier this evening. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, next we have our ordinance 2025 organizational cooperative agreement for the joint tourism. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion?
If, on that, it was brought up, the tourism got all this money saved up, could we get some kind of plan of what they're going to do with it?
Interim Director Lawrence, can we,
Yes, I think we can give you a little more information regarding it, and then certainly the operating board would be who, and we'll get into the budget process and kind of give you some ideas of where we're going.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Byrne?
Could you also give us a highlight of what they've been spending the money on in the past? Because
Correct.
there was a lot of marketing at the beginning.
Correct.
Expense and stuff like that. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And I would like to just thank Mr. Lawrence for his service in that role, and also thank the citizens that came forward and had positive comments about how you've been operating. Thank you so much for taking that on and doing such a great job. Madam
While
Clerk?
he's doing his other full-time job in an excellent capacity.
Exactly.
And if we're going to add on to that,
Wait, hold on. I don't think you can toot your own horn
no,
here.
I'm going to toot Emma Cook's horn, because Emma, who's our only single employee other than the director, and to the question we got today about our website was resolved today. So she is really the workhorse doing most of the work.
Please communicate our thanks to her as well. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky? Aye. Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, next we have our opioid abatement appropriation. Ms. Hill, if you could just spend just a brief amount of time telling us what this is.
Yes, this is for the New River Valley Recovery Ecosystem Program that Holly Lesko has come and spoken to us about over the past year or so. And it's to provide support for people with substance use disorder. And it's a regional approach. It's a grant that we received from the state through settlement. I guess it's not exactly a state grant, but it's settlement money from the distributors, pharmaceuticals, and so forth. And it has to be spent for the opioid abatement projects.
Fantastic. And do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Do we have any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the County Capital Fund appropriation. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Fitchukowski?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, moving on, the next item on our agenda is our annual board member appointments to boards and commissions. All of you should have already reviewed the list. I know we've had a lot of discussions in the past couple of days about this. I've talked to everybody individually about these roles. And somewhere in all of my papers up here is my list. Okay, we'll go ahead and start from the top. The first role is the AFD Advisory Board, and I'm actually interested in filling this role if nobody else wants to volunteer for it. Okay. And then moving to the Chamber of Commerce Liaison. This is typically filled by the chair and the vice chair, so that would be me and Vice Chair Fidzikowski. On the County and School Liaison, I want to propose something a little bit different and make sure that everybody's in agreement on it. This is generally filled by our chair and our vice chair. However, Supervisor Mary Biggs has served in this capacity for a very long time, is extremely passionate about our schools and extremely knowledgeable, much more so than I could hope to be. And I am hoping with the board's blessing that we could continue with Supervisor Mary Biggs as one of our liaisons and Vice Chair Fidzikowski, with me still serving as the alternate.
Good choice.
I thought so too. Wonderful. Okay, thank you all for indulging me on that one.
Thank you.
The Economic Development Commission, we currently have Supervisor Kitts serving in that role, and he has indicated that he would like to continue serving.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to serve as your alternate for that position, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am. All
All right. The Fairview District Home Board, we have a member of our staff, Alexandra Strickler, who goes by Alex. Alex is already attending those meetings and could represent Montgomery County in that role.
Yes.
And then Supervisor King has agreed to continue serving as the alternate. Does that work for everybody? Okay. And then our legislative
Chair
liaison.
DeMontz.
Yes.
We do need to have action for Alex on a separate resolution,
Okay.
which we can do immediately following this one, since she is not an elected official.
Well, you'll have to help me fumble through that.
Okay.
But yes.
Marty will help us too.
Okay, great. Our legislative liaison role has been extremely capably filled by Supervisor Biggs for many years, and you would like to continue?
Yes, I enjoy asking for money from the state. It gives me great happiness.
Wonderful, thanks. You do a wonderful job at it. Our library board liaison, Supervisor Kitts, has indicated he would like to continue that role, and Supervisor King is going to serve as your alternate. Perfect. And then on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we're going to change things up from how we did things last year with that one. Previously, Supervisor Kitts was the primary and Supervisor Grafsky was the alternate, and we're going to flip that and have Supervisor Grafsky serving as the primary and Supervisor Kitts as the alternate. Okay. And then the Montgomery County Sustainability Committee. This has always been my role, and the scope of work for the Sustainability Committee has actually changed considerably since we brought this back. It has we've created a sustainability manager position since we started re-meeting with this committee, and so it's not, it's more of a in-house staff committee at this point. And so I am happy to continue serving as the kind of a representative of our board on that role, but it is not kind of the same committee that it was when we first put it on our annual boards and appointments. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to that, Ms. Hill?
No, I think that's an accurate assessment of it. And if you wanted to, if you don't feel that it's necessary to have a liaison or a member appointed to that any longer, the staff could certainly provide updates to you, to the board, when the meetings are held.
I actually think that that would be a really great approach, just because it is completely within Montgomery County. It is only Montgomery County staff that are serving on the committee. There's no members of public on the committee. And so I kind of think that that would be a more appropriate approach. I'm still very passionate about it, but the goal has morphed into more of a actual working within the staff team.
Right, and when that got started, it was important that we had board representation to make sure that we were going to go in the direction of the board and that you could be there to lend that. But I think you're right that now we're at a point that we don't need as much input. And if we did, we could come to you for that, to the entire board.
So if everybody is comfortable with removing that and recognizing that that is an in-house function of staff.
Yeah.
And then, Ms. Hill, if we could just ask for maybe quarterly updates on the activities.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Parks and Rec Commission liaison, I don't think it's any secret that this is my very favorite thing. And unless anybody objects, I would like to continue as the primary for that commission. And then Supervisor Fritchkowski, would you like to continue to serve as the alternate?
Yes, I would.
Perfect. Road Viewers Board, that's all of us. That's our field trip where we... Oh, did I? Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Commission. My fault. I got too excited about the Road Viewers Board. Planning Commission was formerly, or this past year, it was Supervisor Todd King and Supervisor Anthony Grafsky. The two of them have discussed the Planning Commission and would like to continue serving as our Planning Commission team in some capacity, recognizing that there will be some back and forth for who's attending those meetings. Thank you very much, both of you. Now, my very favorite thing, Road Viewers Board, field trip opportunities here. All of us do serve and will continue to serve on the Road Viewers Board. Transportation Safety Commission, I believe we have the appropriate person in that role.
It's one of my favorites.
Everybody has to have their favorites.
That's right, yeah.
Vice Chair Fitchkowski, thank you for agreeing to continue in that role. And then the Virginia Tech Liaison will continue to be Ms. Hill. Is everybody comfortable with that? Is there any discussion surrounding that?
I make a motion to accept that.
Marty has a comment.
And I think we can include Alex in that broad resolution because she is a county staff.
Okay. So in the broad resolution, we're going to still have Alex, and then immediately following this, we need a separate resolution.
No, I don't think we need a separate one.
He changed.
No, we're
He
good.
may have changed his legal opinion.
Were you concerned about how I would handle the change to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. Then Supervisor Bone has made a motion. Can we?
Second.
Perfect. And any other discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchkowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, and the next item on our agenda is to appoint Supervisor Mary Biggs to the New River Community Services Board. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Fitchkowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
And then the last item on new business is the appointment to the Montgomery County Tourism Development Council. Our agenda originally had Supervisor Mary Biggs being appointed to this role, but am I understanding that we might be?
Right. Supervisor Kitts and I talked about it, and he has an interest in that, and I'm perfectly willing for him to do that.
Great, thank you so much. So this would be a motion to appoint Supervisor Derek Kitts to the Montgomery County Tourism, the Montgomery Tourism Development Council.
Make a motion.
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Kitts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Fitchkowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Grafsky?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair DeMotts?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, moving on to our report section. County Attorney, do you have any reports for us?
I actually do, and in honor of your first board meeting as chair. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that there's a change in state law where now we have to annually re-adopt our remote participation policy. And so just wanted to let you know that we'll be placing that on the agenda at the next meeting. One thing to keep in mind, there was also a change where we can limit the amount of times people seek to use the policy for personal reasons. Right now, it's 25%, which amounts to about 6 to 8 meetings. You guys can lower that if you want, so consider that, and we can add that to the policy at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then next, our county administrator's report.
May I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Marty,
Yes, ma'am.
can we wait until February 8th to do that?
Yeah, the only rush is
Till after
yeah,
February 8th?
If the board so chooses. The only waiting, we won't be able to use the policy until we readopt it. So that's the only risk.
Okay.
So do you want to wait till the first meeting in February?
I think that Steve and April can figure that out. I just wanted to know if it was possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. Thank you. Good clarification. And next up is our county administrator's report. Ms. Hill?
I have a few things. I'm looking forward to attending VACO Legislative Day next week with several of you. Also, you may have noticed in the front of the government center that's on Roanoke Street, there are some cones that are placed there. We're working on an LED sign. That's what the cones represent, the area that the sign will be placed. So we're moving forward with that. We think that it will probably be completed during the current fiscal year. I tried to pin Scott down a little further, and he said no. But that was safe, probably during the current fiscal year. One other item that I'm going to ask you to take action on at the next meeting, there's a BEAD program that stands for Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment, and federal funds that pass through the state that can be provided to internet service providers. We have interest from at least 3 internet service providers that are going to apply for this funding. And when the providers apply for the funding through the state, it helps them if they have a resolution of support from the locality. I spoke with Gigabeam, which is our partner, as you know, on the VADI projects, and they were aware of that. They knew that we would be likely approving resolutions of support for other entities, and they're one that plans to ask for those funds as well. So that will be on the next meeting agenda, but I just wanted to give you a little information about that. If you have any questions, you can let me know. That's all I have. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. And now we'll move to board members' reports, and we'll start with Supervisor Biggs.
I don't really have a report, but I do have a question for Marty to update us on the vaping situation that we keep getting asked about.
I'm not sure of the vaping situation, but if you're asking about maybe regulating the,
Have anything we can do as a board to, in any way, limit or place, I guess, like in the future, stores that sell and all that
the
good
state's
stuff?
given localities the authority to regulate the sale of not just vaping, but other nicotine stuff within, I think, 1,000 feet of a school. And maybe there was one other use, I can't remember, but school is the main one. And so if you guys are interested in doing that, it would come under a zoning regulation. So we'd have to go through planning and planning commission and then, come up with an appropriate ordinance for the board to consider. So if you guys are interested in that, I could get with planning, we could prepare something, bring it back to you, and then have you send it to the commission for their review. Probably be the best way to do it.
Is anyone besides me interested in
It's
that?
really interesting that you brought that up, because Supervisor Kitts asked me about that quite recently as well.
Well, I've been asked by the school board members over and over again, so.
Yeah, I'll back it up.
Are there vaping sales in the county?
I mean, I believe so, that there are some stores.
Like the one tobacco store went away.
I don't know if there are in the county or not, but there potentially could be some in the county that are in closer proximity to schools.
And a caveat to that is, I want to you know, I had talked about this. I've brought this up a couple of times. I'm glad Supervisor Biggs brought it back up. But it also gives the towns something to start with as we begin to develop this, because it's something that's become a problem and we need to address it sooner rather than later.
And we could have planning look and analyze the current land uses and especially those areas around the 1,000 feet of the schools, like Bellevue comes to mind maybe, and I can't think
Maybe
of any.
in the Auburn Strand.
Yeah, the Auburn Strand, correct, and then in Eastmont. So we can check and see if, you know, if there's potentials or if there is anything down there that's selling, so. There will be a grandfather clause for those operating.
Yeah. Okay, so we have enough people that are interested in pursuing that?
Yes, I think so.
All right, thank you. That's all.
All right, Supervisor Grafsky, report?
I don't have a report this evening, just welcome back and Happy New Year to everybody. And looking forward to another great year of work.
Supervisor King?
Don't have no report, but congratulations to both of you. And
Thank you.
And one of your biggest jobs you need to do now that you are chair, do something with this cold weather.
I'm on it. Supervisor Kitts.
Okay, so I'm address something that's coming up. As you know, I'm on the Fire and EMS and Rescue Board. And one of the things I want to be able to do as we move forward is I want to be able to bring this up here real soon to initiate a comprehensive study so we can begin to develop long-term and short-term solutions for enhancing fire and rescue operations. As you know, we're growing and we're growing out, especially out Pepper's Ferry. So I think this is a chance, it's a unique opportunity for us to be collaborative with the two towns and the university so we can create a strategic plan that allows us to focus on optimizing, combining volunteers and career staff. Studies should be able to assess current fire stations, staffing levels, service needs, and identify any gaps and growth opportunities. And then we just need to be able to evaluate the future. I mean, one of the biggest things you'll hear me bring up over and over is we need to look ahead. We don't need to be static with what we're doing. We need to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And as we go through this and we grow, we need to determine what the optimal locations are for stations, for personnel, and to make sure that they get the support they need. And this should also be able to forecast and develop effective funding strategies to make sure that we can take care of these improvements. Because the volunteers need to know they're being supported, and when the county needs to know that they're being taken care of. And I think this is something we need to be extremely proactive with. So I got the meeting on Thursday where I sit down with the chiefs, and I'd talked to them a little bit about it, but this is just bringing it more into a specific relief. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Ben?
I don't have any report. Congratulations.
Thank you. Vice Chair Fitchikowski?
The only thing I have to share is I'm going to make a big announcement at the next meeting. That's all.
Keep us in suspense.
Alert the media. All right. And then for my report, first of all, thank you all again for allowing me to fill this role this year. I very much look forward to working with this guy here as my vice chair. I think we'll make a really great team. And then one other item for my colleagues, you all have your Region 11 VACO vote for who we want to serve as our board member for Region 11 on the Virginia Association of Counties Board of Directors. So please make sure to put those in the envelopes that circulated around if you haven't already, and give them to Angie before we leave this evening. And if there's nothing else, meeting adjourned.